Hi, Marty. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, Martin. How are you?
Fantastic. Aside from you having a wonderful name, uh, very well. For the benefit of the audience, it would be great if you wouldn't mind just giving a bit of an introduction to yourself and the areas and places that you worked.
Yeah, so I've spent the last 15 years or so in business value consulting. Before that, I was in management consulting for quite a few years with, the Bains, Accentures, and some boutique firms. And I really felt that, the transition from management consulting to value consulting, it was a lot smoother than I thought. Maybe coming in, I didn't know much about value consulting when I started. But I started at Oracle, was there for quite a few years. And then the last three companies I've been with were really newer teams that were in the companies were say 100 million or in that range and wanting to grow to 100 billion. So really building up the practices there.
How have you found across the very different types of companies and their sizes, how have you found the role of the value practice? I would imagine a lot of it also has to do with how much buy-in the organization has around value. But I'd love to hear from you what you've experienced across the different companies.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I think coming into a company that where value is new, right? And when I say new, maybe came in the last year or so, even if it's been there for a year, there's probably a lot of sellers that haven't worked with value and so forth before. So a lot of it is establishing what value does and getting beyond, sort of the simple thinking around saying, oh, these guys gather a data, they fill out a spreadsheet, they deliver some slides, they move on to the next thing. And really working with sellers, helping them understand that we're working with them to understand what are the problems that customers are trying to solve and how we can help them do that. And that's how we're going to help. That's where we add the value, really, as opposed to delivering, here's an ROI. Because if you stick to that first model, you're going to find you don't have much of an impact, but where you're getting an understanding of what customers want to do and explaining to them how your software or whatever solution you have helps them do that, that you're going to have a lot more impact.
Totally. People tend to focus everything on the ROI as if that is the end all be all. And at the end of the day, ROI is just a number that you calculate, but based on which are probably the more important things, the drivers of that ROI, right? The story, the value story that's told in there. From your perspective, how do you tend to address those situations where somebody's very much focused on the ROI first?
First, I want to understand what is important to the customer. And I've had customers where I come in, they introduce me as the business value guy, and they'll say, "Well, I don't need an ROI for this." And then I turn it into, "Oh, well, let's talk about what you do need. You're here because you've got a problem to solve." And start talking about that, right? Or, like you say, some get very focused on the ROI. You get into a conversation, you start gathering some information, and you realize there's not a lot of quantifiable benefit here. There's a lot of benefit, right? Maybe we reduce the number of errors and reduce risk for you a lot, or whatever. But there's not a lot we can quantify that's going to come out dollars. I just tell a customer that. I said, look, we're going to get to this level. We're not going to get to the level that the software costs. But I think there's lots of value here. And then I explain to them where the value is coming from. Does that make sense for you? So that you're setting expectations for them and you're making sure that they understand how you're going to use things. So yeah, if they're very focused on the ROI, it's great if you're going to have a great ROI that can come out of it. But you want to also make sure that you're talking about the other benefits they're going to get, not just the ROI. So.
And a bit of a random question, kind of on that theme. Now, you've worked in a lot of different companies with probably a lot of different value stories. What is the strangest variable that you've ever had to deal with or work with, either variable or outcome? You've worked in ERG companies and software or old tech companies.
When I was at Sprinkler, they would do customer support. And it wouldn't just be on, say, your customer support line, but it'd be on social media and everything. So they're trying to gather all the data, all the people who are trying to communicate with the people. One of the problems, one of the biggest problems they have is, there's a big storm coming, right? And this utility needs to handle all of that information coming in. So really it's handling those peaks. They can bring some people in. Sometimes, you always hear about utility people coming from other states and stuff. They'll even bring support from other states, but they can't handle the whole peak. But really figuring out how to, handle a peak of everyone's saying my power's out or there's a line down here or there was an interesting
like number of reduced outages? Would that be your...
They were just knowing where the outages were and getting the information and getting and the other thing is communicating with people because they may not be going to the company's website, right?
Yeah.
So being able to communicate on social media or text message or however,
Right.
the way the customers wanted to communicate was the key for them.
And look, we talked a little bit before we started recording about the impact, obviously, of AI. One thing is AI, another thing is the vibe coding and vibe coding tools. And I see a lot of companies out there, and from the very top down, are getting these mandates across a company. Use vibe coding tools to build internal productivity apps, to build these things and that stuff. I would imagine from the perspective of the business value team, and especially because of the skill set that business value consultants or business value guys, BVGs, have, historically to build models in Excel, that there is a considerable amount of interest and attractiveness of those tools. In your experience, given the sensitivity of data, of needing to engage with companies and prospects who are giving you what is sensitive information, how comfortable are you using vibe coding tools to build out some of those capabilities?
Whether it's the value team or other folks dealing with customer data within the company and the IT group needs to be aware of that. So I'm going to make sure that wherever we're putting customer data into, that the IT group has said, yes, where I'm going to go first. If you think about vibe coding and AI in general, the thing about whether it's scaling value or whatever, we're always a small team, right? And we're supporting all of these salespeople and all these customers. So the things we need to build needs to be able to work with them, and they need to be able to understand it. So I think that's one of the benefits of AI, but it's also a challenge in terms of, we've got to build things that they can use, and we've got to build things that fit into their process. We can't, I think one of the problems that value comes across a lot is we're viewed as some add-on process, or we position ourselves as some add-on process, and we should be part of the sales process. We should be part of sales enablement. Extending that further, we should be contributing to marketing, customer success, product, and so forth. And we need to, and if we're building tools or processes and stuff, we need to work with their processes, and they need to work with us, right, to make sure that the things that we're putting together, work with what they're doing. And if you're doing that already before you start using AI and vibe coding, it's going to go a lot smoother. AI, vibe coding, building applications, and so forth is going to force companies and sales teams and value teams to work together.
I found sometimes when dealing with a number of companies, and it's part of the mandate, right? Like experiment, which is all fine and good. Yeah. But when you have multiple people all building the same type of tool, but with their own construct, then you find the opposite of standardization. You find 10 different people build 10 different tools, hoping everybody's going to use them. And so I think there needs to be a degree of consolidation of the best performing tooling and the stuff that can work, right? I was thinking a lot of the time, you kind of alluded to it. Ultimately, the sales reps, account execs, they need to adopt this stuff. And what can work for a business value consultant who is, their brain is wired likely in a very different way, probably more from an engineering perspective, calculation models and that kind of thing, may not necessarily work for an account executive who is, wired in a very, very different way. How do you reconcile the two?
Again, whether you're building, say, an AI agent or a group of AI agents to do some of the work that you're doing, bring more knowledge to things, spreadsheets and so forth. Yeah. I think building it within the value team that the value team uses first and sort of cuts their teeth on, gets working, right? Then move it out to the other groups. Probably not the same exact solution that the value team is using, but figure out either how to simplify it or make it work, something that's accessible for the other team, and even better, again, if it fits into the process that they have already, so that it's going in. So let's say it's something like discovery, the challenges and outcomes you're gathering for value. If you can work that into the sales process and into the sales enablement, that's going to work a whole lot better than it being, like I say, an add-on value kind of thing.
What's interesting is I've also seen there's a lot of individuals build out, like, I guess, discovery guides, sets of questions. Have you seen those kinds of guides work for account execs? And again, this is personal opinion. is that you hire account execs in the fact that you don't hire them for an Excel skills, you hire them for natural curiosity, the ability to peel the onion and engage with a prospect, a bit like a value consultant would do, which is you sit on the same side of the table, so to speak, and you start peeling in the onion around their pain points. And that to a degree is a natural skill. You can kind of train it, but the people who are natural at it are really, really good. And it's hard to train to that level. I can't see any tool being able to really help fill the gap of natural curiosity if somebody doesn't have it. I'd love your thoughts on that.
We start by saying, okay, we're not going to get the perfect for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, there's those that are really good. The company that I saw that did this best, they put the identifying what were the challenges, what were the outcomes at the beginning when you're starting with the company, whether you're a salesperson or you're in value. They train you on the products. And if all they do, okay, here's how the products work, the sellers are going to go out and say, here's our features, here's whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But the company trained us on that. And then there was another day to train us on what are the challenges and outcomes and what are the most common ones. And even the calculations that we use. So our calculations were tied to the challenges they identified. The ones that were in the training happened, if we go with the 80-20 rule, it happened 80% of the time. And then there were some others that would come up that we could help them with. But whether we were involved or not, the sellers got trained on those, and their process was they had to identify they were, numbered 1 through 45. So it's number 17, 18, and 22 for this customer, and they knew those, and that helped us. And even if they weren't always right, the sellers, but at least it gave us a good point and a good way to communicate, and it made them better. Again, it didn't get to perfection. And I do think that, again, AI and the thing that's most helpful is delivering to a seller what they need at the right time, right? They get all this training up front, and then, it takes them 6 months before they actually get a customer to where, they're putting together a proposal and so in front of them, and they've forgotten most of what happened 6 months ago. So it's really delivering that information when they need it at the right time in the sales process, right time in the opportunity. So that's something we need to get better at solving it. We're never going to be perfect. I think AI can help us if we plan it out. It takes a lot of planning, a lot of structuring, and so forth to make that work.
And speaking about planning and structuring, you mentioned a moment ago before the call that you're starting a new role and you're building the value practice at a new company. And I find that very fascinating because I love your thoughts on what do your first 90 days look like when you're building out a value practice. I think that would probably be helpful to a lot of people to hear.
It was interesting because this company actually in the job description, they put that first 90 days. So we talked about some in the interview process. And then they also said, we want you to bring, something to this too, which I invite, right? Yeah, and I have been thinking about that. I haven't started yet, but I've been going back and forth with AI saying, okay, here's what they said, here's my thoughts, and how do we do this? So I've sort of got the first few weeks of who I want to talk to, what information I want to gather, and it's going to help me put together a plan. And part of that will be, first I need to talk to them. We haven't talked yet about what they are doing with AI and AI agents. So I'm interested in learning that, obviously. And then if I have to build some agents, I'm learning how to do that, and I'll do that. If there's someone there that can build agents and I can improve them, I think you have to be able to improve things and so forth. Definitely. You don't have to be able to build things unless there's no one else there to do it. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about approaching the challenges there.
I would assume you're an N of one. You're the first and only.
First value person coming in.
And how many sales reps would you be supporting?
In the tens of sales reps. So it's not 100. So it's not a huge group right now.
But I presume it's a new muscle that the company needs to build, right?
Yeah, it is. And they're doing pretty big deals compared to what I've seen. Usually when I've come in, when they're starting a value practice, you're talking about 100 and 200K deals that they're starting to do, right? And you're growing. They're pretty far along, I think, in things. And I think there's been some people who aren't labeled value consultants who are very, very analytical and have been doing business cases for them. So I'm also interested to see what they've been putting together and so forth. They say, I talked to the sales guy. He's like, this guy really helped me with the sales process, the business case. Then I talked to the guy who who he said did the business case, he said there wasn't that much there. So I'm interested to see what it actually is. I'm guessing it's a little less than what the sales guy said, a little bit more than what the other guy
For sure. Listen, I've got just two more questions for you.
Sure.
First one is, you've worked at a number of organizations, and I'm sure you've worked with a lot of fantastic people, but who is the very best business value consultant or value engineer you ever worked with?
Is the one who helped me at the beginning, Lynn Craven. She was at Oracle. I think she just recently, in fact, I know she just recently retired, not from Oracle, but the company she was last with. And like I say, I came in there with a management consulting background. And as you can imagine, Oracle is a big company. So she was both helping me understand not so much how to do business cases, but how to work with buyers and sellers and so forth that I hadn't worked with so much before, and how to do taught me how to be a business value consultant, as well as how to navigate an organization like Oracle. So she left a big impression on me.
And on the other side, in terms of account execs?
There's one that I think about, he was a sales leader, it's a team lead, John Kawanda at Workiva when I got there, and now he's running the majors group. And just working with him, he was really good at, we spent a lot of time, talking to each other, understanding what he was trying to accomplish, understanding what he wanted from each of his salespeople, which helped me obviously in working with them. That's key is not only working with your salespeople, but understand what your sales leaders are trying to accomplish and making sure that you're in sync with what they're doing and telling them what you need help from them with. And John was very good at that.
Excellent. Yeah, it's got to be a partnership for sure.
Yeah.
Marty, thank you so much. Really enjoyed the conversation today.
Thank you, Martin.